And to start us off this evening, we're going to hear an introduction from board member Jocelyn Jackson from the New South Wales Architects Registration Board.
So I'd like to begin myself by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay my respect to elders past and present. The New South Wales Architects Registration Board is proud to support the State Library's Year of Architecture, a public engagement initiative that broadens the public understanding of architecture's role in everyday life. The Masters Project is a 5-part in-conversation series that brings leading architects into public conversation, and tonight is the second instalment of that series. This series focuses on their craft, contemporary challenges, and the role of architecture in shaping cities, culture, and communities. These conversations are hosted by Tim Horton, an award-winning architect and previous registrar of the New South Wales Architects Registration Board. This series will offer valuable insights from experienced, successful architects, but they are not only for architects, but for anybody curious about the built environment and the future of our cities and neighbourhoods. The New South Wales Architects Registration Board is committed to building trust in the architectural profession and supporting initiatives that engage the public in discussion about architecture's impact on society. By supporting initiatives like the Masters Project, we aim to support a deeper appreciation of the built environment and the architects who shape it. Over the coming months, this series continues with an outstanding lineup, including Peter Stutchbury in October, Richard Laprastria AO in November, and Penelope Sider AM in December. Tickets are on sale for the next events on the library's website, so we hope that you can come to the next ones. Louise Cox is a lion in the profession who has genuinely pioneered a path in practice, public policy and politics, not only within the architectural profession, but as we will hear in the global forums that argued for coordinated design, planning and infrastructure long before cities became the pressing priority that they are today. Here she has been an enthusiastic member of the Australian Institute of Architects for well over 50 years and was the first woman to become the national president in 1994. She has been a trailblazer for Australian architecture internationally and especially for women in architecture here in Australia. She has walked with the women in Bangladesh, argued for recognition of architects in Moscow, and advised Nobel Prize winners. Her contribution is recognised by 9 nations, including as a Knight in the Order of Arts and Letters in France, the Order of Australia, and as a Fellow of the Royal Society of Arts. All the while, Louise remains famously modest in her achievements, and I understand she is only here tonight under duress. I've known Louise since the mid-1970s after joining the Cox office as a recently registered architect. Philip Cox encouraged me to come back to work after my first son was born in 1970, telling me that Louise can do it, so you can do it. My son was under the desk for 3 months in a basket, and that's about all I could take, I think. In saying that, Louise, I have heard that Louise would leave baby Charlotte in the site office whilst administering a project at RPA Hospital. Perhaps she can correct me if this is wrong or it's just a story. I've looked up to Louise as a role model for practising women architects at a time when the profession was more dominated by male architects than it is today. So the "you can do it" phrase has stuck with me after all these years. Please join me in welcoming Tim Horton and Louise Cox.
Thank you very much, Jocelyn and Lydia. Thank you to the library. Thank you to the Architects Registration Board. Thank you to you for coming. out on a Wednesday night to see and hear Louise Cox. She is here under duress, and she's going to hold me to a few promises. We have some slides we'll be talking to, but not directly. They'll be in the background, and it's a little bit fluid. I'll try to time them to coincide with things that we're talking about, but, we'll keep it fairly loose. The logic here is, as Jocelyn has already mentioned in some ways, is to ask a question: what does it really take to master architecture? It's a question that the Glenn Murcutt Architecture Foundation has been asking for about 20 years as it's run masterclasses for students and for architects around the world. And then in this series, we turn the attention to the masters to ask that question of themselves. It's a short-form 5-series live event that you're all part of here at the State Library. It's also part of a 10-part podcast series that's coming in October. It looks at long form. It wants to understand people as they are, as humans, as well as they are professional and as architects. And it'll be available on your favourite podcast platform, and sort of enough said. It's supported by the Murcutt Foundation, also by the Alistair Swain Foundation, so with gratitude to them, and of course with the Library and Architects Registration Board, which just brings us here tonight. Where this does not begin is with me reading a biography of Louise, because pretty much the conversation we're about to have is the biography, but done in a slightly different way. So, with that, and by the way, there will be some questions afterwards. So, the question of whether Charlotte was left in the side office, Charlotte might wish to answer that question later on. We start here, and like to ask what, in some ways, your earliest memory is, and it predates this image that we see. This is one, I think, the war has just finished, but take us back. Your earliest memory, when was it and where were you?
My first memory is being Mrs. Bloggs with a wonderful hat with fruit and stuff on it, walking around the garden in Carly Avenue, Killara, on a very steep side. And I was very proud that I was Mrs. Bloggs and I could walk around the garden and look at it. And I must have been 2 at the most, I think. There are many early memories I have. Another one was going up to Killara Park, the Oval, which is now the Bert Oldfield Oval, up the top of Arnold Street, Killara and Rosebery Road. After the war, there were a lot of swaggies who lived in tents up in the park, and this guy was making scissors, and I was fascinated by these scissors because they looked like parrots. And that was fine till Mum found out. And so she locked the doors then, and because she said, "Why are you going up there at 5 o'clock in the morning? You know, the guy might do something to you." Well, I didn't know what she was talking about, of course, but so that's another.
You're 5 years old, and at 5 a.m. you're going to... So for anyone who is under 60 in the audience, what's a swaggie?
Well, they were returned soldiers, I think, from the war who had nowhere else to live. It was pretty horrible in 1945-46. I mean, during the war we had alarms going off at 12 o'clock on Sundays to test the systems in the streets, and they rang this siren thing. I remember it distinctly. And then 1 hour later they rang it again and rang the all clear. I mean, the old aunts who lived around the corner from us, they had paper all over their windows. They had buckets of water and buckets of sand in case the place went up with a bomb or something or other. How it was going to get to Killara, I'm not sure, but that's the sort of thing that we were doing. I mean, I went to my first party at the US Army base down at Bradfield Park behind Linfield, and we actually had a cake. It was a pink cake. We'd never had cakes before. During the war, everything was rationed, so you just couldn't get things. So that was another thing I always remember. And the invitation had gold decal around it and was printed. I mean, it was amazing. You just didn't dream of things like that.
And so you're one of 4 siblings. You're the eldest. Yeah. You've got a memory of walking down a hallway in Crown Street as well, is that right? Off to see...
My next sister Penelope. Yes, I do remember that. There was a chest of drawers at the end of it. And then I presume you went into the room. I can't remember anymore.
And so, talking about your family, tell me about your parents. Who are your parents?
Bettina and Bob Gowing, they were. And they had 4 kids. And once we all got mumps, except my brother. And so they put all the girls, I have another sister, Felicity, they lined up 4 beds in their bedroom, and we had to have a nurse to look after us. Mum's neck swelled up so badly with the mumps, they swelled for 3 months. And Dad had to kind of look after us. He didn't know what to do, of course, but he couldn't even make a cup of tea. So
you're Gowing. Again, anyone who knows where Mecca is on, just trying to connect with the younger audience here, Louise, on corner
Mecca?
of George and Makeup. My brother's girlfriend goes there all the time. My wife has been seen there too. Corner of George and Market Street is where the Gowing store was, certainly in my time. But this building is important to you, not the Gowing building, but this one. And this was known as the...
This is Peeps.
Yeah.
Men's and boys' wear up at the top of Hunter Street. It's now, well, I don't know what it is now, actually.
It's the Dyson store downstairs.
Oh, okay. And it had Hardy Wilson, Neve and Berry were the architects. And Hardy Wilson used to come up after the war more, I presume. But Dad was the assistant manager during the war, so he didn't go off to fight. I always felt guilty about that, but I'm glad he didn't have to.
And so the Gowings were the assistant managers, the Gowings in your family, were the assistant managers of Peeps on George and Hunter.
It was great. We had boys' pyjamas, boys' dressing gowns and things from the shop.
Why was that? You're a girl. Why did you have the boys?
Well, he got a discount, I suppose. I don't know.
But isn't there something special about a boy's dressing gown?
Yes, it's 5 times warmer than a girl's. It was much, much better. And there was an elliptical oval opening in each floor. And you could look up and down at all the different departments. And Hardy Wilson he lived in Melbourne by that stage, and he used to come up to Sydney, and he'd go and talk to Dad for hours and hours, and they'd talk about architecture and things, and he'd open the little drawers for the ties and the underclothes. He really liked the joinery inside the building. It was all Queensland maple, I understand. So it was interesting. And he sometimes came to our house in Killara and talked to Dad about the celestial city he was designing at Kurrajong, halfway up the way to the mountains. And I remember looking over their shoulders at these plans. I didn't really understand them, but they were at my house, and I did see.
46 of them are now in the National Library in Canberra, apparently.
Oh, really? Good.
So you hang out in a great work of early 20th century architecture. You hang out with some of the big names in architecture. Were you always wanting to be an architect?
No, not really.
And but I think it's fair to say you were keen on going to university, but not to do architecture?
No, I just wanted to go to the university. When I was 5, my father's best friend was David Myers, who was the Dean of Electrical Engineering at the University of Sydney. And he gave me a train set. Oh, I loved the train set. And he just, I don't know why, there was something about this guy that I clicked with, even though I was only 5. And he encouraged me to go to university. And then later on, when I did try to go to university, I thought, what can I do? What's the longest course there is to do at the university? Because I just want to stay there. I didn't have any idea what the university was about. I'd never been there in my life till the first day of first year in architecture in whatever it was, 1957, John, wasn't it?
But before you get there, this is the thing about talking to Louise Cox, that she name drops like you would not believe without realising it. So, your dad didn't want you to go to university, so who convinces him you should?
Okay, so we're having a beach holiday down at Newport, and John Kerr was there with his family, and he convinced my father on Newport Beach that I should go to the university. I'd spent time with their family on their holidays because Gabriel was my best friend, and he thought I should go. So he did convince my father, so I was allowed to go. Dad thought it was an iniquitous, terrible place that taught you terrible things, antisocial things and marching down the street and all that. He thought I shouldn't do it, but I'm very glad I did.
So this is John Kerr, who was at one point a barrister, at one point Chief Justice of New South Wales, at one point Governor-General, that John Kerr, right.
Yes.
And so in architecture, you're at Sydney University. Who are your contemporaries?
There are a few here.
Yep. You can name check them too.
I can see some of them. But Philip Cox met Caroline Cullisell and I on Callara Station, and he came up to us and we had to take this clipboard thing. And he said, "Oh, are you going to do architecture?" So we met on Callara Station going to Redfern on the first day in 57. And Darryl Conybeare, John Crothers, I don't know, there were 50 of us, 10 girls and 40 boys.
The proportions have evened out, I think, if I look at the board.
And it was the most girls I'd ever had for years.
And what clicked in architecture for you while you're at university? What aspect of it?
I don't know, because I used to go to Lura to play golf on Wednesdays. And the pictures on Friday afternoon, and Miss whatever her name is used to keep us in and call the roll at 12:10 so that we'd be late for the films. I liked the Green Archer, and you missed out on the serial if you couldn't go there.
But you also talk about some of the lecturers, and one in practice that you, for example, say in the podcast, at the time you didn't understand what you were being taught, you were pleased that they passed you, but then that you spent the rest of your life really doing. So you pursued practice, you pursued construction and detailing. These weren't necessarily strengths you identified at university, but they begin to shape you in your career, don't they?
Yes, in fact, every time we had a construction exam, I hoped it had a double-hung window so I could just draw it, copy it onto the exam paper, because it had about 55 different moulds and shapes and whatever, and I could never remember how it went together. And the only way I learnt was to go around Philip's construction sites on Saturday mornings to see how people actually built, because we didn't understand anything.
And I think we're going to come back to construction and your experience on site.
It's okay, I like it.
And once you graduate from university, your first job in architecture is?
At Peddlethorpe and Walker for a year to get enough money to get out of Australia. I wanted to see the world. I'd never been anywhere at all. I don't think I'd even been to Queensland at that stage.
And so let's go overseas then. You travel first to Italy, don't you?
Yes.
Yep. What takes you to Italy?
Well, we had some distant cousins in Italy that no one had seen since before the war, Second World War. And so I met them. The cousin who was my age, he'd been to Canada on a scholarship, so he spoke English. Everyone else spoke Italian, which was a bit difficult. I'm very bad at languages, and it was quite daunting to have to, and exhausting to have to listen hard to try to understand and make out what they were saying. Because I only failed one subject in the leaving certificate, and it was French. But she did teach us the grammar, which was good, so that I could change it for Italian and change the accent a bit. But I enjoyed being in Italy. I felt at home there. It was good. And they took me to Finale, Liguria for the weekend, and they lived in Milano, so it was quite a 2-hour drive or something between the two. But Finale was on the beach, so you could go swimming, and he challenged me. Made me go to the swimming pool in Milan, have a race. Luckily, we'd had 4 weeks on the boat in the swimming pool going to Europe, so I was pretty fit then. And I didn't beat him, but, I wasn't too bad.
Challenging you is also a theme we're going to come back to, and what happens when you do. And Venice we might or might not touch on, but you've been going to Venice in Italy for 61 years, is that right?
Something like that.
Yep.
Yes, well, I stayed with the aunts in Milano for, a few weeks. And they all went on holiday and left me there. So I thought, I'll just drive by then I had a car, so I'll drive myself to Venice. So I drove off to Venice, and it was the most beautiful day. And when I arrived and parked in the parking station near the railway station, I then caught the Vaporetto to the youth hostel. And when I looked out the windows of the youth hostel, there was San Marco. It was sunset. It was pink. The sky was that blue that Venice gets, and the water looked clean and blue as well. I was sucked in by Venice. Got me. So I keep going back there. I went the other day for 4 days. It was really nice.
And anyone who knows you knows that one of the things you love from Venice is a good pair of glasses, good pair of reading glasses, bright.
Yeah, I didn't bring them with me, but I did succumb to buy a pair of Ukrainian type glasses. They're blue, mid-blue at the top and yellow at the bottom.
Keen eyes will find you in a pair of bright blue glasses shortly with a baby elephant. We'll see if we get to that. So from Italy, you go to Germany. Again, this idea of driving the car around. I think you hit 60,000 miles or something through Europe. 60,000 Ks. So, and this is a story we hear from Richard Johnson, we hear from Keith Cottier, we hear from Penelope Seidler, the importance of travel and seeing architecture in place. At this point, you weren't necessarily pursuing architecture, were you?
When I first went, no.
Yep.
No, but I had 1 year at Peddlethorpe.
Yep.
And I'd done work in the Christmas holidays with other architects, but long before that too.
And then we land in London.
Well, I finally landed in London, yeah. And I couldn't get a job there, and they said, "Oh, you're a woman, we don't employ women." And finally I managed to get a job with Chamberlain, Powell and Bond, thank goodness.
Who had employed other Australian architects?
Yeah, Darryl Jackson and Ken Woolley. They were. I never met either of them, till I came back again. But they were old boys of Chamberlain, Powell and Bond. It was like a family. It was very nice.
And we're in London in 1964, 65, is that right?
Yeah, yes.
And who are these two?
Okay. That's Roy Emerson at the finals of Wimbledon. I think that's Fred Stolley. I can't remember. But a friend of mine who had been working in Germany helped me buy my Beetle car in Frankfurt. And he said, "Oh, I'm going to go around Germany for a month soon with a friend." And I said, "Oh, okay." I said, "Well, if it doesn't work, just tell me and I'll come with you." And anyway, he did tell me finally, and I just drove out of Perugia, where I was supposed to be learning Italian, and went off to somewhere in Germany, past Munich, and met these guys, and we started travelling in Germany and Denmark and the Netherlands and Belgium. And on the beach near The Hague, we were listening to Wimbledon while we sat on the beach. And when we got to London, he went to the new office for ICI that he was joining, and they said, "Oh, do you want to go to Wimbledon?" And I'm really cheeky, and I said, "Yes, I'd love to." It wasn't my job, it wasn't my office, but anyway, they gave us 2 tickets to the finals of the men's singles in Wimbledon, and it was absolutely amazing. So I never got back again. I've only listened to it on the radio or seen it on TV ever since, but it was an amazing experience to have when you, whatever I was, 25 or something.
And then we returned to Sydney, and you returned back to Peddlethorpe. Graham Thorpe gave you a job.
Yes.
And said,
"I hope you're better than you were last time." And I said, "Well, I hope I am too, but I want a job on site somewhere." So that was really good, actually. So they were fixing up this building in York Street for the Australasian Pioneers Club, and they let me kind of be the site architect. Thank God for the foreman. He was amazing. He taught me everything. And it's very interesting.
and again, construction and being on sites is something that you really like.
Yes, I like seeing it grow and change on site.
We're going to look at a few projects in a minute. You've said on the podcast that 0.1% of architects are good designers.
Very true, yes, I still believe it. Might even be 0.01%. I'm sorry, guys, girls, but...
And that the rest are technicians, and all are important.
Absolutely. You need us to help you.
And you've said that you were always good at working out complex programs for complex projects.
Yes.
And on site.
Yeah, well, you couldn't kill the patients in the hospital, could you? You had to have I've had 2 incidents, one on Sydney Hospital where the contractor hit the main power line and there were still people being operated in the old building that we were going to pull down, and luckily all the
Generators came on.
yeah, the emergency equipment all worked, thank God. Another time at RPA Hospital when we were doing that job, they hit the main water spout in the middle of the site. It was like being at Chatsworth at the Duke of Devonshire's house, and this squirt of water went miles up in the air. Luckily we were fixing the steam pipes and we had lots of spare valves, so they put that on onto the side and stopped it. But I quite like it. It's quite dramatic when those things happen. It's much more interesting than just putting a brick on a brick.
And then from Peddlethorpe to MSJ, which becomes quite an important part of your professional career, I think. You directed for almost 20 years.
Yeah.
And with it, I want to focus on 4 projects: RPA, the Commonwealth and State Law Courts, a hospital in Malaysia, and Sydney Hospital that you've mentioned. But first, the other abiding interest of yours is heritage. What got you into heritage initially, or who got you into heritage initially?
Well, I don't know. I like history. I like Australian buildings. All the way through university, I was interested in old buildings and whatever, and I just enjoyed heritage. My mother took me off to the women's committee showings of people's houses while we were at Sydney University, and so I was interested in that. And then as young architects after university, some of us would go off and look around the countryside and go and measure up buildings and things for the National Trust, etc., etc. So I really liked that.
And your first pay packet went to what?
Oh, well, yes. I decided I'd want to be a life member of the National Trust. So my first pay packet went to buy a life membership of the National Trust in 1964. It was good. I mean, they wondered who I was later when I said I was a life member, because I kind of dropped off the thing for a while. But anyway, I'm still a life member there.
And we'll pick this up with some of your roles that you still have, but certainly had with ICOMOS and Docomomo and UNESCO. And so you maintain this interest and involvement throughout your career. But let's turn to the projects. What's this one here?
This is RPA Hospital, the main entrance. We built E Block, which was a 13 or 14-storey building at the back through that archway, and Charlotte was nearly born on the site. But she was a good girl. She didn't cry too much in the site sheds, because I used to leave her with the clerk of works. And he got into trouble because I came back once from talking to the builder, and she was screaming her head off. And Public Works said to us, "What's that baby doing on the site?" I said, "It's mine, and I'm sorry, but I've got nowhere else to put her. And I'm sorry if she's screaming, but, you know, she's all right."
So that's RPA, quite an important one. This is also one that deserves a story. So this is Queen Square. To the right there, we've got... it's difficult for you to see. The old Queen's Club.
Oh, there's a building, the Queen... Which is
Yep.
yeah. Yes.
And then so explain the brief that you were given initially. Because it's not just this building that we know, but it also included the old Supreme Court across the way, didn't it?
Yeah,
So
well, I was just one of the architects drawing up, detailing that building, this building. I didn't do the outsides or the courts themselves or the ground floor or anything, but it was quite interesting doing all the detailing, getting everyone to draw it up and organising the program for how to draw it up and get it done. But
am I right that you say the old Supreme Court was initially to be largely torn down except for the Greenway stair?
that's correct. And it would have looked ridiculous having the Greenway stairs sticking up out of nowhere, like the column in the park or something. But that was Philip and Morton Herman going to see John Kerr again as Chief Justice, and he helped them get the government to change the brief so that we kept the Supreme Court. It should never have been even thought about that they could get rid of it. I mean, I went to McConnell, Smith and Johnson thinking it was a nice low-rise building, and find I'm documenting some, whatever it was, 23-storey building, and right on top of the railway lines.
And when you say right on top of that railway lines,
Yeah.
how close?
Well, this column there is right on top of right about that far below the surface, and it's on a big neoprene thing to stop the acoustic, anything getting into the building and shaking it. So, it looks easy when you just see that, but it's not easy to build. Sometimes you get into strife. I had to investigate how to fire rate steel and stuff. Now they've found you can use the steel itself for that, but in those days you couldn't. So,
And this is a steel frame building, not a...
yeah, that was the last steel frame building for a long time, because just after this was done, Sydney turned to reinforced concrete buildings.
And so I think you say again in the podcast that you know the detailing so well that you could almost draw those details again today.
Yes. Also, I learned all about acoustic detailing from Peter Nolan. It was wonderful. So I used it on every job ever after, and it was great for doing hospitals.
Like this one. So this is a big one in Malaysia.
Yeah, this is a joint job with Philip Cox and Partners and McConnell Smith and Johnson and Kampul and Karamalai from Malaysia. And it had 60 buildings on the site, you can see there. And we had to do it in a hurry. And not only do we have to get it built and documented and everything else, but they had to equip the hospital as well. It was a turnkey project that Australia did with Malaysia. And Leighton contractors joined with Mutajaya to build it. I was lucky enough to have to go there every 3 months to see the state of the buildings and make sure there was some quality there. But it was interesting because we were supposed to do technology transfer. Well, did it the other way around. When we went there, we realised that the labourers were building the buildings and that we had to document it in such a way that they could build the buildings, which was timber trusses and tiles and things on the roofs and one single skin brickwork. So it was different to what we're used to here.
But we're beginning to see Louise on the global stage understanding how you need to adapt to other cultures. So that's a theme we're going to return to very soon. You've talked about Sydney Hospital, this one here, I think done with the Government Architects in Association, is that right?
Yes. Yes. Well, they designed a new building and then we looked after the quality of the construction of that.
So returning to this idea of you on site and construction, something you love, when you first started going to sites, the great joke was to walk Louise through the blokes' toilets, wasn't it? Is that the state
Oh,
of
I
the
love
site?
doing that. I just smiled sweetly and let them on. Okay.
Oh, sure. So there's the retiring Louise, and then there's the Louise that fights back. So what does Louise do if you push her too hard?
I went on one job and I was taking over from someone else in the office and I go to the first site meeting and they said, oh no, not a girl doing this job, I can't bear it. It was a joint McConnell Smith and Johnson, Anchor Mortlock, Murray and Woolley job, and Bryce Mortlock was looking after me on site to make sure I didn't get anything wrong. Anyway, that annoyed me so much that one day, about 2 months after that remark, they built a little trial wall to show me how they were going to do something or other, and they annoyed me so much that when I went past to look at it, I just went like that and pushed it over because I'm not going to be, dictated to by these people who don't understand anything.
Yep.
the builder had gone into a liquidation. We were building it with subcontractors, with the builder's foreman as the help. It was I always seemed to get the jobs that didn't work in the office. I had to make them work.
So if there are any students of architecture here or young graduates, just read the practice notes for advice before you push over walls on site. But otherwise... and this goes to something that you do say on the podcast, which I really love, which is don't challenge me, because I will always take up the challenge. We saw it in the swimming pool in Italy, when you're challenged to a race. We see it on site. And we also see it in going not only first woman president of the New South Wales chapter, first female president nationally, but then also here we are, Louise Cox becomes the first ever Australian to hold the office of President of the International Union of Architects. Something also that was a role that you held from 2008 to 2011.
Yes.
Yep. Why spend time internationally with a bunch of architects? What's the role?
Well, I realised by that stage that I knew a lot of things, and I wanted to give back, and I knew I could. I'd done more than just doing kitchens for some house somewhere, and I knew a lot about practice and everything else, and I just wanted to rev up the UIA and make sure it was fit for purpose and did the right thing for all the architects, and to tell them that it wasn't just me doing it, that they had to help do it. And it's quite hard to get people off to do things that they don't really want to. They like saying they're the president, but that doesn't mean that they're not, they don't want to do any work, most of them. So it's hard to stir it up. So I'm sorry, I'm a bit of a stirrer, because it's the only way to... where's that?
Where are you here? This is Moscow, isn't it?
Yes.
So as an example of what you do, what does the UIA do? What were you able to achieve in Moscow?
Well, in Moscow, the UIA has a professional practice commission, and they have done lots of guidelines on how to build in someone else's country, how to deal with copyright issues under Napoleonic law, under British kind of law, and you've got to be able to write this thing that everyone can use in all throughout the world. So it's quite challenging, and there's really good things that they've done on how to practice, which is, I don't know if it's on the website, I haven't had to look lately.
But and you count this as one of your small achievements, or it was a
Yes,
revelation?
So the Russians had tried to get their government in Moscow to take up the UIA challenge of how to practice and do things, and they wouldn't listen to them. And so I was marched into the meeting with the minister, and I had to, in English do it, because I can't speak Russian. And after I left, they told me that they'd actually agreed to take notice of the UIA, and they'd changed their rules to adopt what we'd done. So, that's what UIA can do for you. And you always can go to the UIA and ask them to help you.
And then part of the UIA also...
Go back.
Oh. You're signing something here. This is...
I don't know what it is. Doesn't matter.
Yep. I was going to go to this one. So another practical thing that the UIA did, again reflecting your interest in heritage. What's this one?
Yes, well, in 2000, UIA President Sarah Topelson went to the French Ministry of Culture, and because they wanted to do to pay for a website on 20th century heritage, and I became interested in this, and so by the time I went through there, I was working with heritage, and the French Ministry for Culture and Communications with another body who set up this website. And by 2008 we did a revamp of it and sold it to everybody and asked every member section to put their buildings onto the site.
And whether or not it exists now, seems to be something that we then see in your role with ICOMOS, your role with Docomomo in Australia. ICOMOS is the International Council on Monuments and Sites. Docomomo is the documentation and conservation of the modern movement. And so heritage in the 20th century, whether or not it's a website, whether or not it's advocacy, this is something that has been an interest of yours over the last 15 to 20 years, hasn't it?
Absolutely. And UIA and ICOMOS in 2007 signed a memorandum of understanding, and the same with Docomomo International as well. So I don't know where they're up to these days, but it's very important. But I also got to know the people at UNESCO, in the World Heritage Centre, and that was fantastic.
Before we move to UNESCO and UN Habitat, there's a fantabulous pair of glasses. Yeah. And what is going on here?
Well, that's Frederick Mitterrand giving me the Knights of the, I don't know, of Arts and Letters or something or other. So my friends in Australia gave me a little white horse and a bunch of wattle to commemorate it. And he held my hand for a long time and gave a speech in French that someone stood behind me to tell me what he was saying. I'd never met him before, but what he was saying sounded like we met every day for months and months and months.
So the hard work that you did as well was at COP, I think it was 15, 16 and...
15.
Yep.
Copenhagen.
Yep.
Yes, we had a sustainable by design policy, and as president I was sent off to promulgate the policy at COP15. We did get inside. I had 1 minute on the TV in there that I'd used, and so that every now and again you'd see me up on the screen. But it was really good, and the policy was good. And in Cancun next year in Mexico we did it again, and in Durban in the year after that we did it again. In Cancun we marched through the streets chanting and etc, etc.
Yep. Yep. Rabble-rouser, activist, mobiliser.
You have to.
Yep.
You have to be an actress as well.
UN Habitat, UNESCO, what are the roles there? What have you been working with them on over the years?
UN Habitat, UIA had a partnership with them for years. They've got a thing called the Habitat Professionals Forum, which is planners and engineers and landscape architects and urbanists and whatever. There's about 17 different professional organisations, and the Dutch guy said, I don't want to do it anymore, can you do it? Well, it happened to be just after I became president, and I said, I can't do it, I'll do it next year, but I'll chair this meeting for you. So that set me off having to work with UN Habitat, but it was very interesting. And it's all about being the catalyst to help other people. You can't make them do anything, you have to work with them and get them to do it and show you the way. It's very important.
So the advice we like to ask advice from those who are in the hot seat that you would give to young professionals, young practitioners coming through.
Don't give up. Remember, it's about people you're building. It's not about you and your ego. It's about building or creating things that are fit for purpose for people, that people feel comfortable in. It's not about, some amazing building somewhere. You've got to get, as I just said, you've got to get the locals to do it for you, really, but just guide them on how to do it and who to link with and all that sort of stuff. And it's, you know, wherever you go as an architect, you see things or you feel something, and it's really rewarding. Yes.
These are just some of the places you've been to, the walks that you've done. Jocelyn said that you had walked in Bangladesh. I think this is a Women's March or for mothers.
This is the Mother's Language Day on the 21st of February every year, and they march in Dhaka. I've done it twice with the Bangladeshi architects. In fact, the president of their architects' organisation was a freedom fighter. He had a bit of trouble going to the States because he had to say that on his application, and they don't like that.
Occupation freedom fighter.
It's very good.
It's a great one. And who is this?
Over there.
Who are you advising here?
Well, Mulbasa Hussain, who was the president of the Bangladeshi, he knew Muhammad Yunus very well, and of the Grameen Bank, and we just had a few meetings with him. And in 2008, he was a big speaker at the UIA Congress in where was it? Torino.
So you
And he was very nice. I liked him and what he did, and he was a pretty humble man, really. He got into trouble with the locals because they got jealous. And they banned him from doing anything in Bangladesh. I don't know where he is now.
I think he's currently the effectively interim president of Bangladesh. So how about that?
Oh, really? Well, they got rid of Mrs. whatever her name is, Sheikh something or other.
So you have walked your talk literally in Bangladesh. You have made change in Moscow. You have advised those who go on to be Nobel Peace Prize winners. You have trotted the globe. You've gone to Venice for 61 years. You advanced architecture in how many countless countries. But after all that, what is this a photo of?
Well, this is my soul home. I mean, you know, I go here to feel comfortable, to forget the world and smell the beach and the forest and see the kangaroos eat everything in the garden and whatever. The possums create hell, but it's very nice.
Where is it?
It's in the south coast of New South Wales. It's 400 k's from here. And it's a beautiful place. And we're going next week again, so it'll be good.
We have run out of time, Louise.
That's good.
But we do have time for questions, and we have a microphone. Are there any questions for Louise? There is a hand there. Thank you.
Hi, Louise. My question is with regard to a comment that you made earlier in the conversation about working in London and being in an office which was like a family. I wonder whether you could expand on what you meant by that, especially in terms of contemporary practice. Did you mean that the practice had diversity, or did the practice have role models, or did the practice manage itself in terms of collaboration? I wonder if you could expand on that, what you meant.
Okay, I'll give you an example. I went to the cinema once in King's Road in Chelsea. I'm waiting in the queue, and the directors of Chatham Palambon were lining up for their tickets as well, and they wouldn't let me buy the ticket. They bought my ticket, they bought me a box of chocolates and stuff, and I had to be with them in the cinema. They treated you like their family because they didn't have any kids, and we were their family, and everyone loved working there. We all got in early and we left late. We played tennis in the weekend together. I mean, you know, it was just... I always thought the British would be quite difficult to work with, and you have umbrella and the bowler hat and stuff. They weren't like that at all. It was just really nice. So they were real people who did a good job, built all those buildings in the Barbican, did University of Leeds and a whole lot of things there. And that's what I mean. You have to be a person. You can't hide behind a screen somewhere. If you want your office to work, you need to make everyone feel comfortable and do things for you and be proud of what they're doing. Is that good enough? What else would you like?
Any other questions? What's very nice is shortly we're going to go outside into the lobby and, for those who wish to, have a drink together, and so the conversation can continue. What I might do is say that you can find the podcast with Louise and others from October onwards, probably on merketfoundation.org and other platforms. It's true that we have a number of other speakers, and Peter Stutchbury on the 8th of October is up on screen earlier. But sooner than that, on the 12th and 13th of September, in this room we have not one but two Pritzker Prize winners in conversation, and that is Glenn Murcutt and Francis Kerray. And so you can also find tickets through the library website for that, as I say, in this very space. So you can go to the library website for tickets on any of the ones that are coming. I want to thank Murcutt Foundation again, Alistair Swain Foundation again. I think it's very good that organisations like that promote things like this and make it possible. Thank you to the library and also to the Architects Registration Board. But most importantly, will you please join me in thanking the wonderful Louise Cox.
Thank you very much for listening. There's one thing I forgot to say. The new pattern books for architecture to make things easier for lazy people is fine. But heritage in this country and this state is really important, and we are not doing it properly at all. There's stuff falling over every day, and I just implore the government, please, will you understand that what we have here is a heritage of not just us, it's our grandchildren, their grandchildren. Heritage is very important. The history of your society is very important, and I'm horrified at what's going on at the moment. Everyone can contribute, and there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, the more people who contribute and have their voice heard, the better. You get a much better result. So that's my life. And also, just remember, we are people. We're doing it for people, and we're not doing it for us. So, and Tim, thank you very much. Thank you to the library as well for having me. I've enjoyed it too.